Well, hello everyone, it's Michelle, your cruise director here, and on today's Shipmates, I am joined by the hilarious Nick Rado. From his roots getting started in comedy in the UK in one of the world's biggest comedy competitions, to performing on stages, cruise ships, and screens all around the world. Join us for talk on inspiration, aspiration, and the meticulous planning of spontaneous comedy. All aboard for Shipmates. Well, hello there everyone, it's Michelle, your cruise director, and today I am joined on Shipmates by the amazing Nick Rado. Nick, morning, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, my absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, actually, thank you for having me on your show as well.
It's a bit of a weird situation. You are in the studio. I do a radio show on Rodney's More FM in New Zealand, and yeah, you were one of the guests and told some amazing stories, so I can't wait to play that out.
Thank you. Yeah, at the moment I'm actually living down the road from where Nick is based and where he presents on More FM. But I knew Nick previous to this and from my life on ships. So on today's Shipmates, we're going to find out a little bit about Nick, what he does, and get some stories about what it's like being an absolute superstar comedian on land, on ships, and on air.
Wow, that's a great high praise, and I want you to set the bar a little lower for the rest of the 40 minutes or so that we're chatting. But yeah, no, thank you so much. What do you want to know?
So I know what you do, but can you give everyone, all of our listeners, a flavour about you as a comedian, maybe a little bit about your journey, like how you became the comedian that you are today,
Yeah.
what inspired you, just a little bit of background.
Okay, cool. So I'm a stand-up comedian. I've been going for almost 20 years, which is crazy to think about that. I started in the UK of all places. I'm actually born in New Zealand and raised in New Zealand, but I went over to the UK when I was 21. And then I started stand-up when I was 25, I think. I did a So You Think You're Funny competition.
I know that competition pretty well.
Yeah, so I didn't know that at the time, and I just thought it was just like there was like a night at the Bath Comedy Cavern, and I'd just broken up with my girlfriend at the time, and she was not a big fan of me like doing stand up or anything like that.
Really?
Just purely because it was such a fickle industry, and I was like, I don't
Okay.
want to do it as a job. I just want to try it, and so I just was like, I can achieve anything. I can do anything now that I'm from this free guy. And then me and my mate James Burley, we got together and we had like 3 months to write 6 minutes worth of stand up. We entered this night. We didn't realize it was a competition. We just thought it was a new act night. And then, yeah, I ended up getting through to the semi-finals of this competition. It was my first ever gig. And then
Wow.
the semi-finals was in the Edinburgh Festival.
At Gilded Balloon,
The
right?
Gilded Balloon,
Yeah.
yes, you know it well. And then Hal Cruttenden was the MC. I think Julian Clary was a judge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
What comedy royalty to have as a judge.
Yeah, and then I got second on the night. The guy who won was a guy called Tom Allen, who's now gone.
I know Tom really well. I used to work with him at National Youth Theatre.
Oh, so Tom smashed
Before
it.
his huge fame as well.
He was so funny. He was great. So I think I got second on the night. And then I was a little bit gutted. I was like, oh, how come because they would put the winner of the semi-finals would all go through to the final.
Mhm.
And then the second place, I think they only had like 3 or 4 places. So it was like wild cards and they got to choose who went to the next round. And I was a bit miffed because I was like, well, Tom ended up winning the whole thing. And I was like, well, if I got second to the guy who won it, how come I didn't get to the final?
Surely, yeah.
Right? So I went back, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago. So this was in 2005. And I looked back, I was, why, how come I didn't get into the final? And I looked at the final that year, and it was Stuart Goldsmith, Charlie Baker, Tom Allen, Sarah Millican,
Okay.
Kevin Bridges.
No way.
Yeah. And there was like a couple of others as well that were like just at O2 Arena acts and things. I was like, fair enough. Maybe it was fair enough that those guys got through. And then so from that, my fifth ever gig was at the Edinburgh Comedy Festival. And so from that, I got agents and, people to say, hey, you're a legit stand-up. They thought I'd been going a lot longer than I actually had. And so I just started working. And so, yeah, so something that was a story in the pub for me to tell, to say that I'd actually just tried stand-up comedy through to 20 years later actually performing it around the world, which seems quite surreal. Took a little while to get there, but I would say the first 4 or 5 years I was just, yeah, it was a bit of fun and semi-professional, but then the last sort of 15 has been, yeah, we've been working and gigging and traveling around the world, and started doing ships maybe 2014, 15, which was for me too early.
Okay, interesting. Tell me why.
Because I wasn't strong enough, I don't think. Strong enough is the wrong word. I didn't have enough material. So on the ships, you have to do 2 45-minute shows clean.
Yes.
And so I haven't always been a clean comedian, but for the last 5, 6, 7 years, I just sort of made the shift, and I was already kind of 90% there anyway, so I thought it was just a natural progression. And when I first joined the ships, I had my 245s, but that's all I had.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is that if anything was to go wrong, or if the audience didn't like that style of joke, or if they were just a bit of a quieter audience, and so you were running through the gear a little bit quicker, I had nothing extra to give them. And so I was quite young and youthful, and yeah, it was just...
You still are.
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it. And so I just felt that, yeah, it went well, it went okay, but for me it was like, you can't be like in the marquee theatre and being okay and being, going all right. And so I sort of took a couple of years off purposefully, and just said, if I'm going to come back on, I want to like really smash it and really like, okay, make a statement, and to be, yeah, and to have things up my sleeve, feel comfortable on that stage, to, if something did go wrong, or if they didn't like a certain thing, or if it was like an older age group or a younger age group, I had different things that I could go to, so that I could, yeah, I feel if you want to make it onto the marquee shows and to do especially comedy, I feel like you almost got to have 3 shows up your sleeve, so that you can have enough to fall back on.
And
yeah,
go through your Rolodex of
yeah. So yes, you'll have your 2 different shows, and that'll go great. But yeah, I feel like for me personally, I just and now that I've got that, you never go through the 3 shows, but it's always nice to have as an option. Kind of like when you're a cruise director, having that extra maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't even know, but of backup days if things go wrong.
Yeah.
So now I'm interviewing you. So
interviewing each other. It's brilliant.
So talk. I love to know about that, because we talked about it on our show, the meticulous
planning of fun.
Meticulous planning of fun. Yeah, talk us through that, and how many days do you have up your sleeve?
Okay, so
we reveal that.
Yeah, well, we came up with this. Nick came up with this amazing phrase of the meticulous planning of fun. For me, that's about everything in entertainment, especially on cruise ships. It should look breezy, it should look fun and spontaneous, but also behind the scenes, there's a lot of planning that's going into for those. As Nick said, we don't always have smooth sailing. Sometimes we maybe miss a port due to weather. We try never to do so, and captains always try their best. But when health and safety is at risk, then we sometimes do have to miss ports, or we have to deviate. Like I told Nick on his show, we had a couple of Maydays that we had to go and assist with. So in that situation, we'd have to put on an extra day of entertainment because our guests are at sea for an extra day. When I first started, I would look at kind of a 2-week cruise and be like, right, I'm going to put, and it is very meticulously planned. Like there's the psychology behind everything, behind what game shows go where. I always see a cruise as a whole journey. So it's not just kind of just that game show, seeing it independently as for what it is. It's where does that game show fit into the overall like flow of the cruise? Yes. So when the guests get on, they're kind of, they're new, they're learning the way around the ship. They are tired, maybe. If there's a port day, they've been out all day since early. They may be a little bit more tired that night. They have big highs when we've got big theme nights and big parties. Right. Towards the end of the cruise, they either go one way or the other. They're all maybe preparing to leave, or they're making the most of every last single second. So you're kind of charting that guest's journey throughout the cruise and trying to anticipate what kind of entertainment they want at what point.
Yeah.
So I'll plan out maybe a 2-week cruise, and there'll be those kind of warm-up introduction game shows where they can get to know me. At first, I'll start off with game shows that are really engaging, but kind of quite warmy-uppy.
Yes.
They'll get there kind of them talking with their friends and family, doing things together. Towards the mid of the cruise, and we can start to bring in those things that are really, really exciting, like kind of getting them up and doing a lot more and getting them involved when they're a bit warmer, they know you. It's like for you warming up a crowd, you know, you can kind of get away with a little bit more with them. So yeah, I'll kind of do that, and then towards the end it'll be a lot of things with the team. So I've got a whole entertainment team, bringing them into the mix so that the guests get to see us as a full team, get to say goodbye to all the entertainers, and get to just reinforce all those happy memories as well, and make some very final fun memories. So it's a whole process. If we have an extra day that I need to film, when I first started, I would be pulling from stuff that maybe I was going to plan later in the cruise, and then would kind of just deal with it as I got to it. Now I'm way more rehearsed with it. You know, I have a little stock of game shows, activities. I work with kind of a senior cruise staff who would have been an assistant cruise director back in a previous role, and they will help me with the kind of trivias and the game shows for the guests, and then I'll do the kind of big high ticket stuff.
So would you, sorry to interrupt, but would you have like similar game shows that you would replace? So like, for example, it's that mid getting to know, or them starting to be the stars of the show. You would have like similar ones. Like, let's just say it's that you don't do you miss a port day in the middle. You would then kind of look to your Rolodex of those kind of things. Yeah. Interesting.
I always think like a missed day is a great opportunity to make the guests feel better than they would have done originally. Because it's a really big thing. As soon as the captain comes over and says, it's the weather's, you know, potentially dangerous, we can't do this, I then have to follow up straight after and go, bing bong, okay, good morning everyone, you know, that's not the news we wanted. However, we're going to make the best of it. Your entertainment team are busy beavering away behind the scenes, and we're going to come up with a brand new entertainment program. So then I have to pull from my Rolodex, I'll write the new program, I'll send it straight to the printer, who we have just one printer on board who prints everything. They're called the Good Times, which is our dictionary or encyclopedia of everything that's going on. I'll email him, he'll produce a whole new Good Times. We'll print that, we'll put it on the screens digitally, and that will be all done within about an hour.
Wow. That's crazy.
So yeah, and then I kind of tend to put in really, really good stuff on that day. I will jam pack it. If I normally do a 10:15, an 11:15, and a 2 and a 4, I'll fit in a 3 and a a 1. Like, I will do as much stuff that day to try and make up to these guests that have missed their kind of port, that we'll have as much, you know, we can't control the weather, but we'll have what we can control is how much fun we have. So I can never kind of make up for a missed port, but I always do try.
Yeah, I really like that. So me and my wife and children, family, my family, we went on a cruise, and like not as a guest entertainer, but just as a family with another family. It was so much fun, but equally what we found, it was really interesting to be a passenger, because now I feel like I've got something for my own stand-up as well, because I now know that there's that journey. Characters start to form on the ship, and I would love to chat to you about this exactly. Like, you probably have these. They're all very different. Everyone's unique, obviously, but you probably always get the one that she overshares and becomes, you know, that they become the part of the cruise, or they become, you know, like the Mr. and Mrs. one gets it all wrong, or the lovey-dovey couple, or the you know, the people on the verge of divorce, or whatever the thing is. There's always characters that appear, and the passengers love it, because they see them and they almost become celebrities in themselves, right?
Absolutely.
So is that, I like to call it scripted improv, where you don't know what's going to happen, but you kind of leading them towards something. Is that fair to say? Yeah, I'd love to get the psychology behind that, and also I want to ask, and then I just got a follow-up question. But yeah, get the psychology first, and then I'll ask you the follow-up question.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's actually a kind of I learned that technique from doing MCing, because kind of it's the way that when you get somebody who comes in to do a warm-up for a gig, they are always trying to find traits within people that they can
Yes.
latch onto and that they can bring back between each performer. So you end up giving people nicknames. You end up kind of finding things about people that end up becoming a running kind of theme throughout the gig. So I learned it that way, and then I just kind of stretched it out for a cruise. So you're absolutely right. Those same characters that you would pick up on in a gig, I get to pick up on in a whole cruise.
Wow.
And like you say, they appear very quickly. So it might even be the first night game show, you know. You end up kind of, somebody will do something or say something, you'll end up, I'm bad with names, right? So it was my way of dealing with being bad with names, is to give people nicknames. Unfortunately, when you're the cruise director, those nicknames stick. So we end up with people walking around the ship for the next 12 days or whatever, calling those guests by the same nickname. However, those guests kind of love it, from my experience.
They love it.
They feel part of something bigger than themselves. They feel part of something bigger than just a holiday. It's now a community. They're now known. People will speak to them. Some of those people might be on their own even. Like, so, you know, you start to, it sounds cheesy because it is our tagline at P&O, but you start to bring people together. So that whole psychology of making people feel important and familiar, but with kind of some gentle kind of jesting, actually really helps to bring people together into one community. And I do find by the end of the cruise, and it does sound cheesy, but they do feel like you've known them forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for my follow-up question for that would be, as a stand-up, as a guest entertainer, coming in and being on the cruise, like I felt like, because sometimes you're on it for the whole time and sometimes you just sort of dip in and out, but I feel like it's a really great opportunity as a comedian to know and to go to the cruise director and go, who are the characters and who in this game show, what did they do, or that kind of thing, because you can easily just make that as so-and-so here. I've heard, I've only just joined yesterday, but it's not as if someone had done this or whatever, and then they laugh or whatever the thing is. And so it's kind of almost tapping into that framework of what you're kind of building behind the scenes. And if the guest entertainer can come in, especially the comedian can come in and add to it and reinforce it, would that be something that would be quite good?
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. I mean, I even love the fact that you're thinking on that level of detail in terms of engagement with the guests.
Yeah.
But absolutely, like if you came to me and said, you know, who are these standout kind of characters, I could instantly reel them off, you know. Right. Even now we have people that, you know, I think of, I don't know if you're listening, but there was a Mr. Jiggles that became very popular at one point, just from a jiggly dance move he once did, but it stuck over Christmas. There was Dinosaur Man, who happened because he drew a picture of what was a chicken at Cruise Director's Trivia, but it looked like a dinosaur. So then everybody did dinosaur noises at him the entire duration of the cruise. And it's something so silly like that. But, you know, if it's people that get up at the game shows, or it's people that maybe get up, some of the magicians that come on board, they get people up. Again, they ask me, is there anyone out there that's good? So it's not that anyone's stooge or is set up, but they know who they can kind of utilize. And we've already done that warm up kind of for you. It's part of the process.
And I think now, as a guest entertainer and learning this, I feel sometimes, because you're trying to get into the rhythm of the cruise, and sometimes that's hard. But actually, now I'm like, okay, well, let's just go straight to the cruise director, learn about what games have been played as well, and what have they missed a port or that kind of thing. Because I think a lot of the times as well, you have to make a judgment call on, especially as a comic, as whether you highlight something or move on from it. And so sometimes it's good to highlight it because it's in everyone's zeitgeist, and everyone's like, they almost want you to chat about it. But then there's sometimes where it's just like, okay, if I talk about this, the only way I can do this is in a negative way, and that's going to really affect the cruise. It's going to affect the morale. It's basically, you know, it's no good because, you know, at the end of the day, you're working for a company and you don't want, you know, I don't want to be slagging them off for something that they can't control or whatever. So, but to move towards, you know, hey, what can we control? What can we make fun of, or what can we have fun with? I think that could be quite good. The other thing I was going to ask you as well was with regards to the planning of the different, like when you do port days, like it just seems like that's like your day off, or not? Or not really? Or is that when you're hardest working because you got to do all the behind the scenes stuff?
So we do get some time off in port
Sure.
on occasion. For me, it's sometimes a little difficult. And also there's times when certain crew members, certain officers, we have to stay on board to it's called an IPM, but basically it's that there's enough people manning the ship whilst it's in port that if
Like a
anything
skeleton
happened,
staff.
you've got enough to still perform all the safety duties. So there's certain rules and regulations over that, but also, you know, port days tend to be the time when I get to spend a lot of time back of house and get to do a lot of planning. Every cruise director is different. For me, I'm a very out there cruise director. I'm always out there with the guests. I genuinely love being out there with them. I love talking to them, getting to know their stories. I love feeding that into stuff that I'm hosting. So I will be out there quite a lot, which means that my port days tend to be my kind of time to catch up on that. And also just to catch up on life too, because we do, you know, those listeners that know me well, like the crew do, you know, we do work long hours. We absolutely adore what we do, and it's never a chore, but we do work long hours. So there are some port days where you just go, actually, I have to give up today. I just have to do some washing, or I just have to do those, you know, basic chores. Also, I get up quite early on port days because I do the arrival announcements for where we arrive into. So if we arrive in very early, so I'm up as well. And if we've got tenders, like the little boats that go across to the islands when we dock in the middle of the ocean, then I'll also do the announcements for those as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on.
Okay, that's good. Okay, well, I think those are all my questions.
I
Sorry,
love how this
interview.
interview is completely just flipped.
Yeah, but I've always wanted to know that. But yeah, but that was also handy for me as a guest entertainer to be able to utilize some of the things that go on. And yeah, I think I get quite optimistic and quite excited about that because then you can intertwine what's already happening in the cruise with your stand up, which is fantastic.
I just love that. And I mean, I love your attention to detail in general, and that kind of you are so guest focused when you come on board the ship. I mean, something that's really interesting about Nick is that you're our marquee comedian. Some of the comedians that we've met on the podcast already, they do our sit down comedy club. We work with Sit Down in Brisbane, and they send us these wonderful comics. But Nick, you are our marquee comic. So with the fact you have 45 minutes clean material, and you make it onto the marquee stage, and you're one of the only comics that I know that does do that kind of I won't say bigger, but you know, that kind of marquee theatre style show. I think I know why you do that, but I'd be quite interested in knowing, like, why do you how did that come about rather than doing the comedy club style thing on the ship?
Yes.
And what do you think makes the difference about your act?
Yeah, so interesting. So my grandmother, always when I started doing stand up, she found out that I was doing it. She was saying, "Oh, I hope you're not one of those, comedians that swear or do all this kind of stuff." And at the time, I was, and I was kind of like going, you know what? Like, funny's funny. I don't want to be put in a box, and I don't really want to be. Yeah, I just want to do the thing that I want to do. But then after a while, I was kind of already sort of 70% clean anyway. And what was finding is as I was writing this new material, when I was performing on stage, people were really loving the cleaner stuff. And when I would go into stuff that wasn't clean or I'd swear or whatever, it felt like I was changing gear without putting in the clutch. It was just like, it felt this real jarring and pulling back of the audience. And they were like, oh, we didn't really expect that from you. And so then when I started to have a family as well, like my kids and things, I was suddenly aware of not just myself. And I became a little bit more, oh, there's other people in the world as well. And so I was starting to think more of like what they were thinking. So when my kids were younger and something would happen on the radio and you'd be like, oh, that's a little bit, we call it about age appropriate.
Okay.
What have you. And so I would then not, there's different, and that's not to say that that stuff isn't funny or entertaining or that I enjoy it. It's quite the opposite, actually. Some of my most favorite comedians and favorite entertainers I could not watch with my nana or my children. So I basically decided that so there was one angle of it and one side of it. Then there was another side where I was basically, even though my heritage is Croatian Māori, so
Oh, wow.
yeah, so
Okay.
European, but also native to New Zealand Māori. And so my great grandmother was Rangi Hohepa, and my great grandfather was Nicholas Radovanovic, who I'm named after. And they couldn't speak English, well, they couldn't speak the same language. So one was Tadeo, one was Croatian, and so I think they had 8 kids, so they didn't talk the language of love. That was the only thing that they did. But
They were clearly very busy together,
very busy,
without talking.
exactly, yes. And so yeah, some cruises, that's the perfect marriage, particularly is the no talking element. But I feel like, so for me it was a point of difference. So because I look white, I there's no real sort of like distinguishing really super characteristic thing. Like he's not like I'm super tall or I'm unbelievably short. Like I am short, but I do this joke about where I'm not short enough to do jokes about me being short, but I'm also not tall enough to not feel like, uncomfortable or imposed by, like with other people and stuff like that. So it's kind of this weird thing where there's this no real thing that you can latch onto. And so for me, the clean aspect was like, oh, well, here's a point of difference. And then the other aspect of that was when it came to corporate gigs and when I was getting other gigs, when I was doing sort of dirtier stuff, I felt like I was having to, and when I was on the ships the first time in 2014, I felt like I was having to chop and change and almost like not perform my material. I was having to edit on the fly because I would start a joke and then I'd go, oh, actually, I can't even do the end of that joke because
Okay.
yeah. And so, yes, I'm fulfilling my time and my 45 minutes, but it's just not cranking. And so I decided to then go clean, and then I felt from that my corporate gigs were so much easier because I didn't have to think. I could just do whatever stuff, and then that helped with the cruise. But what is tough and really hard with it is that it takes me longer to write. It's a lot harder. And then the only way I can test this material is on the comedy clubs or in the comedy club. So I have to follow the most, like whatever. But what it means is that it's tried, true, and tested in the hardest of grounds. And I think if I can make it work in the comedy clubs after following the greatest comedians being as filthy as they want, and it still hits hard, then I'm like, well, I can then go to the marquee and perform that on that stage, and it'd be, super funny. And people often come away from my shows and they they laugh and they go, "Oh, that was great," but then the compliment is like, "And I don't think he's, I don't think he swore. Was that clean? Was he clean the whole time or whatever?" So sometimes I'll do shows on other ships, and they'll require you to do 45 minutes of clean and then like another 30 or 45-minute adult show. But what I do is I just do my stuff and it's just later and people
Yeah.
really enjoy it and they're like, oh, that was really fun. And they go, oh, and often say to me, oh, I liked your adult show more than your clean show. I'm like,
It's the
it's the
same
same.
material.
Yeah, well, it's not the same material, but it's not, it wasn't dirty.
Yeah.
It was just later. And it meant that I could probably talk about more things that were just a bit more relatable to adults. And so to going back to the thing as well is my son and my daughter, they have a really great sense of humor. And my son's really got a real knack for writing and knowing what a good joke is. And he's enjoying comedy and we're enjoying watching comedy together and he'll show me funny things and I'll test jokes in front of him and I'll go, hey, what do you think of this? And he'll go, oh yeah, whatever. And so for me to be inclusive of that of my kids um, is really quite a special thing. And I really want to distinguish myself as not a children's entertainer. So for me, like working on a ship like Disney, I don't think I would be able to do that because they are so kid forward or like it's kid first and they will have a few jokes for the adults that go over the kids' head. But for me, it's like I'm just doing my stuff. The kids can come along and they can relate to it. But a majority is kind of almost coming at it from the parents' point of view rather than, hey kids, than the other way around. And so that's why I did it. So yeah, and it's reaped rewards, and now I'm getting lots of stuff in America. And yeah, I never thought of the rewards of it. I just thought of this is going to make my life easier in the long run, because then I don't have to change my material. And it suited the goal of being better at the cruise ships as well. Because sometimes when you have like a death, or like with things didn't go very well, sometimes you can just blame the audience and go, oh, the ships are rubbish, or like the cruise ships audiences they're no good. But for me, it's like you can do that to make yourself feel better, but at the end of the day, funny's funny, and you just got to try and work harder and be better. And so we have this me and my business partner Taryn Mohumba, who's another fantastic stand-up comedian, who we run a comedy club, comedy company here called Laugh Club New Zealand, and we have this phrase of "Don't get bitter, get better," and
Nice.
that is us.
It's quite hard to say in a Kiwi accent.
Absolutely, it's the worst. It's the worst phrasing in a Kiwi accent, but it just stops us from comparing ourselves to others and just go, okay, what can we control? How can we get better? And if we can get better, then that's going to be great. Because, yeah, we often also as well have this thing of like, if we catch ourselves comparing ourselves to other comics or other people, that we just go and write jokes. And so we're like kind of almost like that's our lashings to each other. Like, don't constantly, because it's never going to serve yourself very well. And I think in ship life, and you could probably attest to this, that if you start kind of worrying about what other people are doing, or going, how come they got that job?
Yeah,
or,
absolutely.
How come they got that contract and I'm still doing this, or whatever. If you can, I think it was a guy called Walt Whitman who said, you can curse at the dark, or you can light a candle.
Yeah, nice.
And I feel like that encompassed the phrase of like, okay, well, let's just get better at this, rather than complaining of who is what. Some audiences you'll never get. Some people, they just had a big long day in Vanuatu or whatever, and they've been sunburnt, so they're just a little bit whatever, but zonked out. Some people will just, for whatever reason, they want you to be a certain style of comedian that you are not. And that's fine, that's okay. You're going to get that. You're never going to get 100% of the people. But yeah, I think as long as you know that, my goal is to try and make as many people laugh as hard as possible. Yeah. And however I can do that, that's great. And so that's why we're going back to that thing of like, if I can incorporate some of the things that have already happened in the cruise, it feels like you're coming up with it on the spot, but it feels like you're one of them. And it feels like that you are not, it's not just a cut and paste performance.
Absolutely.
This is a one-off thing that is only these guys would get. And I feel like that's important important in a live environment. It's a long-winded answer, sorry.
No, it's great. I love the inspirational stuff that we just talked about. I think, that don't be bitter, just get better thing, and focusing on yourself, and, focusing on your own improvement and your own development and your own goals, as opposed to worrying about somebody else's. I think we all get caught up in that sometimes. Like you say, we need our own version of whatever lashings we do. Yeah. But I think, the minute we do start focusing on ourselves, then great things happen. And to follow up on something you kept, the word you kept using was relatable. Right. And that's something I think that really stands out about you for me. When I see you on stage, your comedy is just so relatable to everybody. And if you think of a cruise ship audience, they are almost the epitome of a general public audience. It's like you've pulled them from all different walks of life, all different nationalities, different backgrounds, sex, gender, everything. And so you've got this whole smorgasbord of people to try and make laugh. I love that your whole raison d'etre is just to make as many people laugh as possible. And by kind of really trying to connect with them and know what's happened on the cruise previously, you're making that kind of extra step, going above and beyond to do that, which is incredible. But I also think that something you did, and now I know that it kind of wasn't almost intentional, but for me it's very smart that you do clean, relatable material. Because if you look at all those people that you performed in So You Think You're Funny with, they also are reaching goals that, are quite making more people laugh, because they're in situations where they can do lots of relatable, clean comedy. They're performing big theatre stages. Yes, of course, it might be rated a little bit, but in general, that comedy is very universal and very relatable. And in order to do radio work or TV work or even to do like my job as cruise director, we have to really know how to be funny and engaging, but without ever overstepping that mark.
Yes.
So it's a whole fascinating thing for me to see you, how you've kind of created this very commercial, by commercial I mean kind of very sellable
yes
kind of persona as a comedian.
Yeah.
That's elevated you above maybe some of, you know, your peers because of that reason, that you just do great relatable comedy that everyone can just get and laugh at.
Well, I appreciate you, and I think you should say this to me every day, because
I'll swing by every day.
totally. 2 days ago, I was like going to give up because I just had a gig, because I'm writing a new hour at the minute, and so it's hard. Writing comedy's hard, and as long as I've been doing this, it's, you know, you've got your stock standard and your stuff that's been tried and true, and that's great. But you've obviously got to keep on evolving, keep writing, and so I'm in this awkward. Brene Brown talks about this, the murky middle, where you've started the new hour and you've got excited about some of the stories that you're going to be telling, and then there's the end, which is obviously you get the flowers at the end and the chocolates and the celebration. But there's this murky middle where it's like no one can see you doing the work. No one, even if you gave up, no one would really notice that you gave up. And so, but you're in this like murky, and that's where I'm at the minute with my new stuff. And now I'm trying to, just write it and things like that. So you just have these waves of, oh, this is going to be the greatest hour that I've ever written, through to what am I doing with my life, and then start going on Seek, looking for jobs and stuff, because you don't want to do comedy anymore. But it's interesting you say that about relatable. So there's a bit that I did today on the radio, which I'm like, oh, this could be a stand-up bit, which is about, because I asked you before, like how much gig of memory you have on your phone. So one of the bits I was like, oh, this could be quite funny, and but I think everyone would relate to this, is that the iPhone storage on my phone, it said that I'm running out of storage, and iCloud as well, and it says that I need to either update my storage or start deleting things. And so I thought it's quite a funny thing that the iPhone is now making me choose which memories I should keep. And so, like, do I keep my child's, fifth birthday party, or the screenshot of that TikTok recipe that I quite like? But it should differentiate, or the 3-minute pocket video that I've got, all these different things where I'm like, oh, this is that's a relatable thing, right? And you don't have to be of any, gender, creed, or, religion or whatever to understand that happens to people. And so it's like, okay, I've got this kernel of an idea, and it's like, how do I then, make as many people laugh at this as possible without it being super, like, I've heard it before or whatever. It's kind of almost making the everyday stuff, people like focusing on that a little bit more. And, something like that, like a iPhone cloud or iCloud storage or whatever, that thing being full and having to choose between your memories and things like that. It's a really, quite a universal subject, but I would happily spend 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks writing on that than maybe something like that is super niche, or that is not going to kind of maybe
resonate,
potentially, or super topical, and just go, hey, the gossip in this magazine about this thing. Because that'll only potentially give me 2 or 3 weeks of potentially really hard laughs, but overall it's not going to really be relatable. And so the problem I have with the style that I do is that it just takes so much longer to do it, because everyone has had that, experienced that. So how do I get the iPhone storage thing to be a real funny bit, or like story or whatever, or funny observation? I just have to sort of write extra hard with it, because people will naturally go, yeah, he's going to say 5-year-old birthday party, or whatever the thing is. And so, it takes me longer, but I think it's worth it in the long run, because then I get to play marquees, I get to go to America and do some exciting things over there. And so I implore, if you're looking at going clean, do it, but just be wary that, make sure you do it not for the right reasons, but just know that it's going to take you a little bit longer. So but there's lots more opportunity. There is it's just a different hole in the ice, I guess, is what I would say.
I love that. And so talking about writing, I know that you set yourself a little challenge recently.
Yes.
You've been writing, is it an hour a day?
So John Cleese, who is Montana fame and Faulty Towers, he does this thing where it's an hour and a half a day.
Okay.
And so the reason why you do an hour and a half is because it's half an hour of you to go, I've got to do that shopping list, or, whatever the stuff is going on in your mind. Yeah, totally. Okay. Like, I should clean my room, or whatever the thing is, or I've got to pick up that thing at whatever time. And then the next half an hour is for you to kind of go, I've got nothing. I'm the worst writer in the world. What is going on here? And then there's that last half hour is like, oh, there's something here. Oh, okay. If I connect that with that, oh, there's potentially something there. There might be something in the iPhone story, or whatever the thing that you're talking about. And then as soon as after that hour and a half is done, then you get tired or hungry or whatever, thirsty or whatever it is, and you should just stop. And then you let the rest of the day / 24 hours, just let it percolate in your mind. And just, if you get inspiration to write something again, you should always go back, but don't spend too much time on it. Just write down all that, whatever that inspiration is, for 5-10 minutes, whatever, and then just leave it and go, whatever. Get the notes down, get the ideas down, but don't then go another hour and a half. If that's an hour and a half of inspiration, definitely go, but don't feel like you've got to then go again. And so the reason why that is so good is because you have to write through the rubbish. And you have to commit to it, and it's not until maybe the second, third, fourth, week of doing that where you then start to kind of cut through what we call in the comedy world the low-hanging fruit. So the low-hanging fruit is just the easy gag, the easy joke. And a lot of audiences, if they're comedy savvy, will know that you're going to go there. And so the thing with laughter is you have to it's a shock, it's a surprise, and it's a lovely surprise. But if you can shock and give them that nice surprise, then that's fantastic. But if you can go that second, third, fourth layer without being too far away from the original premise, that's where people are like, oh, that's so funny, I didn't even think of that. And so, so that's what the writing is. And going back to the meticulous planning of fun, that's what stand-up for me is that meticulous planning of jokes and fun to make it seem like you're just chatting away, but then you're taking them on this journey and taking through on the story that has a purpose, has a meaning, ties up at the end, and is really funny at the end. And as a comedian, you only really get maybe one or two opportunities and chances to do that. If you go on this big long story and it's just one kind of mediocre punchline, when you start that next long story, they won't trust you. They won't go with you. And that's where I'm in this murky middle at the minute, is where I don't know where the beats are, and I don't know where the story, I think it's going to end here and be a big laugh, but then the audience tells me where it is. And so the first few times that I've told these new jokes, they're laughing hard in the middle, and they're not sort of laughing towards the end, where I need to sort of like, okay, well, how do we get the middle to happen at the end, so at least I'm finishing on this big long high. So so it takes like a long time, maybe for me, from first inception of the joke to feeling like it's comfortable, is probably a couple of months, 2-3 months. And it's long, but once you get there, once you do it, it's great. And then so once I've got these long stories and these long relatable things, then I can start going and punching up the lines and the stories and the gags, and then that's where it becomes this full bit on the marquee stage, where you're like, there's 45 minutes of just really great jokes and gags and stories, and every bit intertwines and things like that. So I can't remember what the question is, but that's it. So
but that's the thing, there's so much similar to my job. There's a lot, the skill to it is making it look effortless and breezy and spontaneous. The skill that people don't see is what goes on behind the scenes. Is the psychology of it, is the creation side of things, is the how deeply we kind of think about our audiences in order to connect with them, to make them laugh, to give them great memories. It's quite a minefield behind it. And I find some of my comedian friends, my entertainer friends, are some of the smartest, most emotionally intelligent people that I know, for that reason, that we're always second guessing what people are going to think.
and it's an emotional, it is, and it's knowing what the room needs as well. And sometimes I'll be on stage, especially in marquee, especially sometimes if it's like an earlier show or a later show. Sometimes the audience wants more interaction and wants to be included in things, and want it to almost to be about them. Sometimes the audience just doesn't want to be talked to at all, and you just have to like, I just want the joke. And sometimes it's a bit of both, but it's also sort of reading that and being empathetic. And you would have the same thing when you're on stage or in the middle of a game show or a quiz or whatever it is that you're doing. You'll pick up on those cues, and then you'll sort of feel that. It's quite, unless you have that scripted improv or that meticulous planning where you know that you've got that day up your sleeve, you can't be in the moment picking up on those cues. And so that's where you get those extra 1, 2, 5, 10% gains, I think, in terms of an audience interaction or them trusting you as an audience or audience. Then because you are almost reading their mind.
Yeah.
Because it's especially when they pull back on something. And then if you just keep ploughing on with the same thing, then they will just not come and turn up to that next thing, or especially for you because you've got to do it on a 2-week scenario. But for me, it's like they won't come with me on that next joke. So yeah, I don't know. It's so important, I feel, to be prepared, ready, so that you can be in the moment and perform. There's a difference between performing your set and performing your job. To it's being proactive rather. I don't know. It's reactive, but you're proactive so you can be reactive. Is the phrase?
100%. So you're totally in the moment.
Yeah. So proactive to be reactive.
Yeah, 100%. I think like being in the moment of being on stage is, for me, it's the most freeing thing as well. Like the reason I love like entertaining is because for that moment, I'm not really thinking.
Yeah.
I'm kind of reacting. And like it's the most freeing, liberating like experience. It's almost like meditation for me.
Yes.
Like my brain actually switches off for once and I'm just listening and engaging and reacting and responding. And I come out with things sometimes that I'm think, I guess, God, you're really funny. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know I was funny. But it's because you're just fully immersed in that moment and just reacting to whatever comes up.
Because you're not thinking about being funny. You're not thinking what the next thing is. You're not thinking. You're just being in the moment. You know what it's called? It's called flow state.
Okay.
Flow state.
No, well, no, not really.
So flow state is basically where everything is just flowing with you. You're not thinking of the past or the future. You're just in the present. And when flow state happens, you won't sort of and ah or trip up over your words. You'll just absolutely you're in the zone. You're flowing. You're doing everything that you are supposed to be doing at that moment. And that's what we're all trying to achieve in anything, whether it be like driving, doing the dishes, through to chatting with somebody, because everyone has had that moment where you are good at your job, but then someone will walk in the room, or a big boss, or something like
all
that,
the time,
and everything changes. You suddenly doubt yourself. You second guess.
Become much more aware of everything.
You're starting to think, will they like this? This is going well. Hopefully they saw that. But even when you're thinking of that, Bruce Lee talks about trying to capture flow state as like trying to capture darkness by turning on the light. Like as soon as you've done it, it's gone. So you can't even go, I'm in flow state now, because you're not then. You're like, it's a weird thing to build up towards. And but once you're in it, it's the most magical thing. And if you can try and be in it as much as you can, and that's why when we're talking naturally, it's fine, or in a normal conversation with people that you are familiar with, it happens naturally. But when someone, like, it's a bigger boss, or it's like a celebrity, or if it's someone that you really like, that you're trying to impress, sometimes you just say the weirdest or wrongest things, and that's not, you're not in flow state. You're in your mind. You are not fully yourself, and you know it. And that sucks. And you can't even really, there's no way to, there's no magic bullet to get out of it. But I think, but if you can do stuff beforehand to help you at least give yourself the chance to
get into that state.
Then that's
completely
great.
Agree. I think it's that classic thing of, when you kind of, you do something really great and really funny, or you say something, and then, like you say, someone suddenly comes in, and then suddenly it goes Pete Tong, and you go, well, why couldn't they have been here 5 minutes ago? And it's not that they should have been here 5 minutes ago, it's that your state of mind was different 5 minutes ago, because you weren't hyper aware that they were there. And I don't know who said it, but there's a quote about that our minds don't enjoy being in the present, they enjoy being in the future and the past. They're much more comfortable in those states. The mind is actually quite uncomfortable being in the present tense. And yet, like, I think for comedians, for entertainers, trying to find that completely present moment happens on stage for us. And for me, it's really freeing. Like you say, it's kind of magical. And if you don't know, because I guess you know a little bit about the mind and the body and stuff as well, because your wife owns a yoga studio, correct?
Yes, that's a little bit. Yeah, so she passed on a lot of knowledge, and I've sort of learned through osmosis for it. But a lot of it is the stuff that we already know. Apparently, the yogis have been doing it for over 6,000 years already. So we're like, but they've just put labels to it and names to it, which helps us, or helps me, kind of like it's a good positive thing to focus on, because again, it's stuff you can control. It's like, okay, well, I can't just manifest or get into flow state, but how can I do as many things as possible to help me get towards that situation where I can at least have a chance of getting there? And if you get there, some shows, some cruises will just feel like I just wasn't for 12 days. That's a lot. Some days you will be on, some days you'll be off. Sometimes you will have like 2 or 3 hours where you'll be like, I killed that, and then it'll be off. But then you shouldn't beat yourself up over that. It's more like, kind of like meditation. You just start again. It's just like, okay, let's start again. And you just don't, you know, you just don't be so tough and hard on yourself because of it, because there's always a chance to kind of start again and go again. And whether it is just like, all right, for this next cruise, I'm going to be a little bit more prepared, or I'm going to not do that thing now, or I'm just going to not try as hard, or when that person walks into the room, I'm going to at least try and, not let it intimidate me, or well, I don't know what the thing is.
It is funny, and I think training yourself like that is where you kind of become kind of very confident in situations where other people wouldn't. Like, I forget that what I do, standing in front of, same as you, stand in front of 800 people on the marquee stage, or even recording this podcast or being on the radio, you forget that you're being just your very authentic self in front of quite a lot of people, and it feels quite normal to you. And you forget that. But I think training yourself to be in that flow state, and training yourself to try and prepare to always be better and more comfortable and whatever, I think it leads you to be able to do things like this without having to worry about nerves. Like, I forget that I don't get nervous about things. I just get excited about them. It comes from doing a lot of improv, I think, as well, where that idea of like stepping out into the unknown is fun rather than scary. So it's something that enables you to have limitless potential as opposed to have imminent disaster.
Love it.
And I think that's what a lot of people think.
And you have to remember that people like doing what we do and standing up is like their worst nightmare. And that's why they go on the cruise or go into the audience or come to a comedy show, because they want to do that. They want to be able to be the person that is up on stage or whatever. But they're coming to you because they need that, not the void filled, but that's a bit dramatic, but like something is, they're wanting to be entertained, to be to have a laugh, or to get, even if it's simple as something as information clearly. And yeah, you just have to remember that that's such a skill, and it's such a niche, and not many people in the world can do it, and to do it at an elite level like yourself, where this is a huge, like, the company is relying on you to make them money, and so you have to be the best at what you can be. But just remember that you are. It's not because you're in a job or in this job because it's like I was lucky and I just done my time and there was just no one else that wanted to do it, or whatever the thing is. It's like, no, you are in there because you are good, and not only good, but you're great at what you do. But equally, they wouldn't keep bringing you back if you weren't adding something to it. And yeah, I think I'm just telling you as a pep talk now that you are fantastic and she is brilliant. And yeah, the thinking and the psychology that goes on behind it doesn't get noticed sometimes, but equally know that it's there, and people can't even understand it. And they go, why is she so good? I don't know. Well, let's just hire again, because you can't just copy and paste it. And so so just know that know that you're great, and know that you're that you're one of the best in the world, because there's there's a lot to ship. Yes, there's lots of cruise directors, but if you think about the world of jobs, there's not many in that field, So she's great, everyone.
Welcome to the Mutual Appreciation Society, everyone. Nick and I pep each other up every morning.
Exactly.
I'm blushing now. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Before we do kind of wrap up, and I wish we could do one of these every morning.
Yeah,
I'll come in every morning for sure. Tell us what's next for you. What are your, what exciting things are coming up, and how can people follow you?
Yes, so I'm writing a new hour. I've just signed a deal in America with Get Her Done Records, which is from a guy called Larry the Cable Guy, who's this big American comedian. He's got his own record label. He's producing my next comedy album in America, which is a huge deal from New Zealand, because I am in New Zealand, and it's like, how did he even find me? But I'll be working on that for the next sort of 6 months, and I'll record it in July and August, and then I'll release it in America towards the end of the year. So that's what's sort of next in terms of work-wise, comedic-wise. I'm doing a whole bunch of ships sort of sporadically over the course of the year and into 2026. And then Nick Rado Comedian, so NickRado comedian, and that's across all the socials, YouTube. And if you want to go see a couple of my specials for free, YouTube is where you go. And so I've got a couple up there, and then this next one will be, even though it's recorded and Larry the Cable Guy will help me produce it and send it out, I'll put it out on YouTube for free as well, because I like to, just get as many people watching as possible. But that's where people can find me, Nick Rado Comedian, on all the socials.
Thank you, Nick. And you've got aspirations. I think you've made
a
goal. Is that correct?
Oh, by the end of the year, I'm going to be on Jimmy Fallon, and then
Jimmy, if you're listening.
Yeah, if you're listening, Jimmy Fallon. So the Tonight Show, I really want to do that show. I think it would be great for me to get on there, and it's just making steps towards that. I kind of know the bits that I would do on it, and some of the new bits that I'm writing kind of lean towards it. So so you just got to make big, audacious goals, and and the big thing for me is time frame, because otherwise I just won't I won't do it. So see me on Jimmy Fallon by the end of the year, or die trying.
Well, I can tell you what, whether that happens or not, and knowing you, I think it probably will. One thing that you can rest assured of is that your previous partner was definitely wrong about you not doing it as a job.
Oh well, yes, yeah. I do owe her a lot though, because when I first did the So You Think You're Funny that night, and they rang me and said, they rang me the next day and they said, do you want to do a gig in Exeter? And I said, oh, no, thank you. And I hung up the phone, and then she was there at the time, and she rang them back and said, he'll do it. I'll drive him down there. And then she went down, and then she saw me, and I didn't do very well. And then that's why my 5th gig was at the Edinburgh Festival, but because I'd done like 3 or 4 before that. But without that, I wouldn't have started. So even the really kind of not negative, because there's no such thing, no regrets and all that kind of stuff, but even the things that at the time was like, well, this was bad, or this was a negative situation, you never know what good can come from it. And I feel like that's the big learning for me is, there's no good or bad. There's just, whatever, maybe.
I love how this episode has turned into something that's it's brightened up my entire day. Oh, it's been amazing. So I just want to say a huge, great big thank you. Don't forget to follow Nick on socials and on his website. If you're in New Zealand, you can listen to him on More FM as well. But thank you very much for joining us for an episode of Shipmates with the amazing Nick Rado. Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for being on board.
Yeah, that's likewise. Thank you. You too. See you soon.
See you on Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for that episode of Shipmates, starring the hilarious Nick Rado and hosted by your Cruise Director Chelle. Remember, don't get bitter, get better. If you'd like to follow Nick, you can visit his website at nickrado.com or search for him on socials at Nick Rado Comedian. You can also listen to him on More FM Rodney on The Breakfast Show at 88.9 FM. And I'll see you next time for another episode of Shipmates.